Welcome to another episode of Judge for Yourself. The Social Justice Coalition recently released its social audit report in Khayelitsha. It found that 1 in 4 outdoor flushing toilets in the area are actually working. Activists from the SJC have accused the city of Cape Town of ignoring the poor living conditions of those in living townships. The city, on the other hand, says that the SJC has got its facts terribly wrong, adding that it is the only metro in the country that provides universal access to safe drinking water, adequate sanitation, and informal settlements. Of course, this particular debate takes place in the backdrop of clear constitutional provisioning which was hard fought for, but was included by way of social and economic rights in the Constitution to housing, to water, to a dignified life. And of course, that's all subject to availability of resources. And that's really the debate. If you'd like to join it, then you, on Twitter, please use the hashtag #JFYCapetown. To discuss this topic, we're joined by Axolile Notywala from the Social Justice Coalition, Paul Bougney, Chief of Staff to the Mayor of Cape Town, and Edgar Pieterse from the African Centre for Cities at the University of Cape Town. Can I start with you? Because the SJC produced its social report. Can you just give a sense to people who may not have read it, what you found?
Well, some of the findings as well.
I want just the crisp thing. I don't want you to drone on. I just want the crisp findings.
As one that you've mentioned, that a quarter of the toilets that we audited were not working, and about half of the toilets that we audited were either dirty or very dirty, which means many people couldn't use them in that kind of state. And that the janitors themselves, the people who are doing the job of cleaning these toilets, 1 in 8 were inoculated at the time to protect them in terms of going to work in those kinds of conditions.
Can I just get this correct? Am I right in saying that you audited 528?
Exactly.
And how do you know that's a representative sample?
In the informal settlements that we work in, we know that these are issues that happen in other informal settlements as well. This is not just a social audit that we decided to do on the day. We've been monitoring and checking these toilets in other areas as well. So we know the issues.
So is that fancy document there?
This is the social audit report.
Can I just get this correct? Because I wanted to ask Paul about this. You say on your 528 toilets that you audited that 26% didn't work, 15% don't flush, 15% were blocked, 12% had no water, and 6% had a sewage pipe. So am I right in saying that's 30, 42, 48, 74% of all the toilets were unsatisfactory, of the ones you audited? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's the issue.
And can I just ask you, would you therefore say that from your research, what you're suggesting is that's a fairly reliable indicator of the general position on the ground?
It is, because it's the people who use those toilets who did the audit themselves.
So what does the city say about that?
Well, there are a number
I've seen that you've criticised it, but you carry on, please.
We have. I think it's important to say that we welcome the social audit methodology. We need an active citizenry, and we need people to complain when services don't work. The concern we have is that this particular audit was only carried out in 4 of the 160 communities in which we provide the janitorial service. I think it also ignores the fact that janitorial service itself is a top-up service the city introduced as a voluntary mechanism.
Can I just, Paul, sorry to stop you, because again, we all know what that means, but people may not. So why don't you just explain briefly what the janitorial service is?
Well, there are 2 key components. We've extended the provision of sanitation. There used to be 14,000 toilets in informal settlements in Cape Town. They're now 45,000. So that's the result of a sustained focus on investing, a sustained focus on redress. In addition, we've now introduced a janitorial service, which sees janitors employed, over 900 of them, in a variety of communities, to clean toilets and to carry out light janitorial work.
How many times a week?
In most instances, up to 2 to 3 times a week. And I think one of the key problems we have with the audit is that we said all the time to the SJC, please share your raw data with us, please help us fix faults as they arise. So instead of developing glossy reports that are months out of date, tell us about breakdowns in service provision, and so that we can address them as they happen. Because I think it's really important, if I could just finish on this point, to acknowledge that at a given point a toilet is clean, the very next day after it's been serviced, it might well be left in a state which is not desirable. And the other big issue we have is that citizens themselves need to work with us as government.
Okay, but
people have a responsibility to leave it in the state that they found it.
Can I just ask you one preliminary question as I set the scene? When you say that they're out of date, and I noticed that in your reply to what I've read too, why do you say that's out of date? Do you have more recent data?
Yes, because we have janitors on the ground every day. We also have a very sophisticated fault reporting system so we can monitor complaints that come from a variety of communities. A big concern we have is that residents in informal settlements do not report as many faults as more established suburbs. We're going to have a very active campaign to encourage them to do so. But in a point of time, a toilet is clean on a Tuesday, it might be used on a Wednesday and be found in a state that is undesirable. What also concerns me, last point on this, is that in the actual data itself, the SJC will say we couldn't access the toilet, but then they also make a finding it was dirty. Well, how can you do that if you can't access the toilet?
I'll come back to it. Help me sort this out. I mean, how does one read this?
Well, I think that as the city acknowledges, it's important that citizens get engaged. So I think we need to put the audit report in a larger context where civil society groups have struggled to figure out how to engage meaningfully with the state. So I think as a first in the country, as a new methodology for citizenship engagement, I think it is fantastic that the SJC is doing this and that the city is encouraging them to do this. There's obviously still disagreement about the technical proficiency and what it represents. And I think that that's normal if you test a new research instrument. So I think that there's enormous common ground to be found between the city and SJC. I think that what we need to understand is if we all agree that accurate data is important, secondly, that society needs to have access to that data so that we can all understand what is required to improve the quality of service provision. I think that's a fantastic common ground. So I think that what we need to do is maybe not be so fixated on the specific report and the responses that it has elicited, but rather understand what's the larger challenges at stake.
Meaning that there is actually a problem that we've got to fix.
No, I think the city would acknowledge that there's a problem. The janitorial service as a top-up is a response to the fact that the normal provision of sanitation is obviously not adequate in highly irregular, informal conditions. But it's a new response, and so any new response is going to have teething problems, it will have challenges. And specifically when you're talking about something that speaks into everyday practices of communities that are highly differentiated, you need the community to be part of the solution.
All right.
So obviously it will take time to get the technology to work.
It's also important, I think, to understand the context.
All right, I'm sorry, I'm going to let you have a chance. I have to take a break, and then I want responses from both of you. But let's take a break first.